What up? Welcome to Homegrown Hustle, where local brilliance takes the center stage. I'm your host, Matt Eickman. Join us every week in celebrating innovation, guidance, and the power to inspire greatness. Let's explore the stories that shape our local business landscape, and together, let's ignite the spark of excellence.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homegrown Hustle. Got another special guest here, extra special guest, who looks great for 79, I will say. I'm not just going to throw it out there, but damn,
Thanks,
if I
Matt.
look that good at 79, that's awesome.
I'll take all the compliments I can get.
Outside of being in great shape, Jeff, let me back up. So Jeffry Brown worked at Apple early in the 80s directly with Steve Jobs. So there was a lot of things going on in technology and overall development of what we now use every single day. And he wasn't just part of the company. He actually was part of a team that helped envision some of the things that laid the groundwork for what all the people I know use every single day and are actually like attached to. So outside of working with Steve Jobs, this conversation's a lot bigger than that. As I've talked with you a little bit, I've learned a lot about all the different things that you've done. So Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. It's a pleasure being here. I'm very excited.
I'm pretty jacked about this one as well. So first off, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and then take us to the pre-Apple days of your career.
Well, as Matt mentioned, I'm a very experienced business person.
I like how you said that.
The only advantage of being 79 is that I've had a lot of those experiences in a lot of different types of companies and a lot of different size companies. So I use those as capabilities that I can help bring to other companies now. I love coaching and helping entrepreneurial companies grow and being successful. So that's kind of where I focus.
And you're currently working with Hill Capital, but you got your hands in a lot of things still. And you've kind of always been that way from what I've learned about you in the short conversations we've had.
Well, let's say I've always had a curious mind. So even before the Apple days, I don't need to expand on this a little bit, but there was a period of my life when I was living in a commune with a lot of other people in Hawaii and doing a lot of mind-expanding things at that time that were prevalent. I wouldn't recommend it today, but when I look back at it, it kind of helped me with the curiosity side of my brain. Always trying to find out why things work the way they do or why things happen the way they happen. And so, that kind of led to, I finally got a degree, finally finished going to college and got a degree in marketing research, actually, and with Asian emphasis. So when I finally got into a corporate environment, which was the first time that I had been hired by any corporation, was at Apple in 1980, it was to do market research. And that's why I was hired. And the fun part about it was that I didn't have any idea of what kind of research they wanted me to do. But the first assignment I had came directly from Steve Jobs. And he said, it's 1980 here at Apple. I'm going to change the future. So I want you to go out and research what the world's going to look like in the year 2000, the millennium.
That's the first interaction you had with him?
That was the first assignment I had, was to spend the next few months analyzing what the future was going to look like 20 years later. So,
did you get any follow-up questions to anything to clarify that, or he just gave you that and walked out the room?
How do you expect me to do that? I have no idea how to do that. And he said, go figure it out, because if we didn't think you could figure it out, you wouldn't have been hired. So that's why we hired you. So figure it out.
I love that. Okay, so let me back up. So outside of your degree, what did the rest of your resume look like at that point?
Oh, it was just...
You had run a small business.
We started a small business while I was living in Hawaii and going to school over there. We created a company called Come Together, myself and a few other friends, and the intent was just to create social activity, bring people together to have fun and enjoy each other. And so Come Together came off of a song by the Beatles called Come Together. And we created a a membership club that you could join for $10. And the way we got people to buy into the membership is we had a lot of good-looking ladies and good-looking guys going up and down the beach in Waikiki and other areas of Oahu and in Hawaii selling memberships. And they could sell a membership for $10 and keep $3, and we took $7. And I think by the end of that first summer, we sold over 13,000 memberships. So we had a little bit of cash to do things, and we threw a lot of good parties at the hotels. The concept of Come Together was to bring people to hotels and restaurants and other entertainment venues and have a good time there and get them to spend money at these places. And when Woodstock happened, which I believe was in 1969, we decided we were going to do something like that in Hawaii. So we created the Sunshine Festival. So that was
it's epic.
Similar to Woodstock. We had some of the same artists. We had Crosby, Stills and Nash and Santana and Buddy Miles and a good number of other local artists and some other national bands. And we created the festival was started on New Year's Day at sunrise and went way into the night and ended up being successful enough that we did it 3 years in a row. So,
were you at Woodstock? Or
I was not at Woodstock.
Part of that?
No, I was actually in Hawaii when Woodstock happened. Well, I had gotten drafted to go to the Vietnam War and ended up in Hawaii instead of having to go to Vietnam. So, somebody was looking out for me.
Well, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
And all right, so we're going to transition from that back to Apple. So you get this assignment, create the future pretty much, or create a vision of the future and research. So what did you do?
We sat around. When I was also told to go find 2 people out of our marketing team and research team that I felt compatible with that would be part of the team to help do this. And I remember it ended up being, I won't say their names, but Steve and Mary, I won't say their last names because I haven't kept in touch with them and they might still even be around someplace. But Steve and Mary joined the team, and for the first few weeks, we did nothing. I mean, we literally did nothing. Now, you also got to understand that the culture of the way Apple worked was not like a lot of businesses. In fact, if you worked at Apple in those days and you had friends that worked at Hitachi or IBM or Hewlett-Packard or some of the other companies that were all around Apple, they thought you were crazy because anybody that worked at Apple didn't have enough smarts to go to work for a good company. At least that was the thought process in Silicon Valley. But Apple's headquarters at that time, we had a huge swimming pool. We had tennis courts. We had cafeterias with 24-hour food service. We had bunk rooms. We had all this kinds of structured gyms so that you would be given an assignment and you would be given a timeline to do it in. Really no reporting structure. I mean, there was no VPs of sales or VPs of marketing or a CEO or a manager or anything. It was just you basically had an assignment or a project to do and a timeline to do it in. And if you wanted to work from 2 a.m. till 4 a.m. and then go grab something to eat and take a nap, that's fine. And then you could work on it from 8 to 10 and then the next morning. But you had to have it done in the timeline you were given. And so as long as you managed your own time to do it, you accomplished it. So we were given 4 months to do this project to determine what the world was going to look like 20 years later. So the first 2 weeks we sat around figuring out, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? And then we finally came up with an idea that what if we go explore every major innovation from the year 1900 to 1980? That's 80 years of innovation. Maybe if we look at all those and see what kind of effect they had on the general populace and how people adapted to it, we could find a common thread that might allow us to use that common thread to then figure out what the next 20 years was going to look like. So if you think about it, there was a whole lot of major innovations that happened between 1900 and 1980, things like, indoor plumbing, electricity, cars, radio, TV, on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually did find a common thread. And so the basis of that led us to saying, okay, let's look at our partners, because Apple had partners at the time. Motorola was a partner, and they were making our chips for the computers. And we had a relationship with Qualcomm and with, I can't think of the name of the company up in Seattle, and it wasn't Microsoft, but it was McCaw Communications. And they had been working on cellular and other types of companies like that were also trying to figure out what the future was going to be like. And so we met with those people as well and kind of told them about our common thread. They agreed. And together we kind of figured out a plan for the future. So that I know the next question, Matt, is what's the common thread? Yeah. So the common thread is that during the first 4 years of any major innovation, we found that only 2 to 3% of the population would use it. And so we categorized that percentage of the population as change agents. They were people whose psyche, their mental ability was that they would try anything. They were fearless, and they would try anything. And most of the rest of the population would be unwilling to try anything. Mm-hmm. So that 2 to 3% would start articulating the value they got from using that innovation. And that would bring on the next 4 to 8% of the population. But that took another 4 years. So now we're at about 8 to 10% of the population using the innovation. They articulated the value that they got. And so now you started a little bit of exponential growth. So that 8% to 10% of the population over the next 4 years would grow to 15 to 20% of the population. And then over the next 4 years, that 20% of the population would grow to 38 to 40% of the population. So it would take about 16 years to 20 years for any major innovation to really take hold in the marketplace and become prolific. And we found that across just about everything that we looked at. Very few exceptions.
Do you think that still continues now, or has all the innovation changed that?
I haven't spent the time to really analyze that over the last, let's say
4 months.
This century. Yeah, I haven't really done that. I suspect it's the same. A lot of people say, well, that's not true today because we have access to information so much faster, mm-hmm. and we have so much more data to process. But the reality is, I think it is the same. If I look at companies that I'm coaching, it seems the same. If I look at companies that are becoming major in the marketplace, I mean, you look at Google. Google started in, 2014. Didn't make its first dollars.
Google's
I mean 2004, I'm sorry. Or 1990. God, I'm way off, guys. I'm sorry. Start over.
Reset. They've been crushing it.
Reset. My brain, all of a sudden, I'm thinking about some other stuff. Google started in 1994.
Okay.
As a concept at the beginning of the internet, but didn't make its first dollars in 2004. So it was 10 years later that it started making its first revenue, and then really didn't become really prolific until 2008, 2010. So somewhat.
Businesses exist for that long without making money. I guess that whole type of business and like having that much financial that's a little bit foreign to me.
What had happened is, I think the companies like Apple and other tech companies from the early 80s and late 70s proved that technology could be extremely valuable and that it takes time to get it into the market. So if I go back to Apple for just a second, in 1982, we did our first prototype of what was to be the iPhone. I mean, or what is the iPhone
1982?
Today. 1982. But we called it a mini Mac because we were working on the Mac computer at that time. And the mini Mac was something that we conceived to be about the size of what an iPad is today, but it would have the capabilities of communications like cellular and video and all that kind of stuff. So that concept was there. But then when Steve Jobs got fired in 85, that initiative was totally taken away. They decided not to do anything with it. And it wasn't until 1997 when Steve Jobs came back on board that initiative picked up again. And so it didn't get into the market till 2007.
That's so wild to me.
Yeah. But the point is what you asked about the financing. In the early days of Apple, there wasn't the venture capital type of structure that we see in the world today. It was because of Apple and others that were started in those days that venture started saying, hey, if I invest in this, and maybe I can invest in 8, 10 companies, 2 or 3 of them might be successful and I'll make a lot of money. And so that kind of caught on. And so there was a lot of funders that made a lot of money in the 80s and 90s that started supporting things like you just asked about, like Google. They said, well, this could be a real winner at some point in time. We just got to stick with it for a while and help finance it until the populace is ready to jump on. So a lot of the information that we did in our study at Apple in the early 80s ended up in a book called Crossing the Chasm, which got printed in 1992. So that concept of having to have change agents, early adapters, so forth and so on, was starting to become more prolific also in the marketplace. And investors started looking at how long it would take before money could possibly be returned to them in great numbers. So
pretty impactful research that you did there. Okay, let's dive here.
Yeah,
we can do that.
It was just part of
your job.
Part of life.
All right, so you're 4 months in. Have you had any additional contact with Steve Jobs or anybody else on the leadership team? That actually sounds like it didn't exist at that point in time.
Well, there was a leadership team. It just wasn't of the kind of structure that we know today. I mean, I had contact with him after I got fired from Apple. I mean, I got fired at the same time he did, and or the team of us got fired. Anybody that had close relationships with that thinking,
they canned it.
Yeah. Scully, who came into being the new lead at Apple at that time, was much more structured guy. He had come to Apple before that he was president of Pepsi-Cola. Whole different type of thinking. It was a consumer product company.
Yeah.
And so he brought that consumer product mentality to Apple. But more importantly, what he brought to Apple at that time was structure of not being so inventive, not spending money on trying to create something new. I mean,
started making money for shareholders and stuff like that.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you come back with the thread that you found through all these, and you present it to Steve and whoever else is in the room. Like, what happens after that?
Well, I think probably the most significant thing that happened after that was our strategy on how to go to market. I mean, the one thing about Steve Jobs was he totally understood how people respond to things. And I mean, I'll never forget that probably 2 or 3 of the comments that he made was that, well, it looks like we don't have to spend any money on advertising and marketing. What we need to do is we need to create evangelism. So the chief evangelist for Apple became Guy Kawasaki. And a lot of people today probably don't know that name either, but if he has written a book and other things and has become quite famous himself. But Guy became our evangelist, and he was the one that was out there promoting what Apple was going to be delivering. And the other thing that was really important that came out of that study is that people don't buy products, they buy experiences. They want to learn from other people, and they want to feel safe when they make a purchase. So they're going to wait for somebody else to tell them the value. So everything that we kind of did from that day forward was wait for other people to make mistakes, and then we would create the best experience with that new technology. And I don't know how many people know this, but I think I think it's still true today. I don't think Apple has ever invented anything. I know back in the early days, it never invented anything. All it did is take other people's technology or concepts that other people invented and make it better and create a better experience for the user. And that was always part of our principle. Make the best experience and people will buy it, and make it easy to use and understand that experience.
So how did Steve communicate that to you?
We just did it.
You just did it?
We just figured it out.
So did he challenge any of what you brought back with your research?
I don't know if challenge is the right word. We analyzed it for.
I mean, you took 4 months at first.
We took probably another 4 months analyzing it, whether it made sense or not. And, I think the team that was responsible for working with us on analyzing it all kind of believed it and figured that, this all made sense. And so,
Then you came up with the iPhone 12 months later.
Well, that was a concept that was being developed as part of the Mac team that was developing the Macintosh. That really kind of came from Motorola, if you, in reality, because Motorola had acquired the rights to the technology that Kodak had invented called digital. Now, everybody in the world out there knows what digital is today, but it didn't exist then. All our computer circuit boards were still being built with transistors and other such thing, and the digital concept was totally different. But the one thing that came out of that study that we got from Motorola was that miniaturization was starting to take place. The whole new paradigm of that things were going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and have bigger and bigger capabilities. And so that the team that was working on the Macintosh started hearing about that, and they go, well, maybe we can make
How small can we get it?
And so that whole concept. And the people from McCaw Communication were talking about, they had come out, I think it was 1983 or 84. My first use of a cell phone was in something that was the size of a briefcase that had a cord coming out of it, but you could literally make phone calls without having to use wires and didn't have to be plugged into anything. But that was, that technology started back then. It just took like the 14, 16 years to become prolific in the marketplace. And then you started seeing things like companies like Casio and BlackBerry and others. They came out with the first, what I call cell phones. But again, none of those had applications associated with them. They were a device that you could make calls on wirelessly. And, with the concept of the iPhone, when Steve Jobs came back in 1997, let's take that technology that people are adapting to now, but make it more useful, make it a better experience. And it took 10 years to get it into the market, but he started getting people jazzed up on creating applications that would work under that technology. So, the world is just an evolution of somebody's idea being put onto somebody else's idea, being put onto somebody else's idea, and how to create the best user experience, and you're going to get a lot of people to use it.
I feel like that's a very simple way of describing it, but it's dead on.
The reality.
So when we talked before we started recording, you were talking about being part of Apple and being part of this conversation about the future, but then not being able to talk about that within the organization because there's a product that's being sold that is a current product, right? Like that's already on the shelves and we need revenue coming in the door. Could you talk about like what it's like to kind of see and know what the future's like, but like not be able to communicate that?
Well, it's really, when I think about it, the experience, at the time, it made sense what we were doing about studying the future and how we came up with what we did. Right after and the fact that like Guy Kawasaki's team, which was selling and evangelizing what Apple was selling at that time, the Macintosh, I really didn't get to spend much time with him because one of the things that Steve Jobs always said was we're going to sell what we have, not what we're going to have. So we got to focus on what we have, not try to create something that somebody wants before it's available. So, that was another thing that came out of that strategy. Let's sell what we have today, not what we're going to have tomorrow. So the iPhone, or that concept of the mini Mac, really, it started a little bit with a product called the Newton, but then that got shelved. And so again, it didn't get resurrected until 1997. But for me personally, all that thinking differently and doing all that research and looking at where the world was going to go really had no relevance for me. I mean, after I left Apple, I got into a whole different career. I mean,
what did you do next?
We got into doing sports marketing, and which was totally out of technology completely. But so I've always looked at what's the market need at the moment, more so than looking at what the need is going to be in the future. And kind of that, when I think about it, it kind of came off of what Jobs taught us is don't sell futures, sell what we have today. But at that time, big corporations were starting to put their names on sports teams and on sports venues and golfing events and all that kind of thing. And so that's kind of the market that I got into at that time.
Because there's opportunity.
So it totally didn't. It had nothing to do with future. It had nothing to do with technology. It had nothing to do with anything. It was just an opportunity at the time.
So I've read quite a bit about Steve Jobs and his career, and there's a lot of talk about how he was like really intense as a leader, and I just think that word kind of limits a little bit of like somebody's personality, because a lot of people would describe my personality as intense, but. So Steve Jobs as a leader, like, could you talk a little bit about how he would like get everybody at Apple to march in the direction that he's going? I
mean, he just set a vision that it's hard to explain, because he had this charisma about him that just, you just enjoyed liking the guy. Now, the movies and the books kind of paint a little bit different picture, but it was a real picture. I mean, what they painted was a real picture, because he had strong constitution about the way he thought. And if you kind of deviated from the way he thought,
he dropped the hammer.
Yeah, he kind of dropped the hammer. So, I mean, I remember one day, one of the guys, and I can't remember the exact circumstances, but one of the engineers was working on something, and Jobs and a couple other people were saying, well, let's look at it doing it this way. And the guy says, well, that's not the way I was taught to do it at MIT. And he says, forget all that crap you learned at MIT. We're going to think differently here. If you think about what they've taught you at MIT, all you're doing is sameness. And we're not doing sameness here. We're doing newness. And so, I mean, it was, that's when he would get upset, is when people would say they couldn't do something because it wasn't the way it was been done in the past. So
he's always pulling that out of the people.
Let's look ahead, what we can do to create a better experience for people.
That's awesome. So
we should talk about, 45 years later, how
let's do it.
Yeah, because what I think today, there's a lot of relevance to some of the things that stuck with me from working at Apple, but the world has changed so much, and technology has changed so much, and advancements changed so much. But I look around at how young new entrepreneurial businesses start, or even existing large corporations are running themselves. They still, I guess in my, who am I to say, but they don't quite get it. It's like the objectives, or people have really forgot. I think the world has forgot about the humanity inside businesses today. And, I'm talking about this now only because AI has become such a prolific part of the market. And in reality, there's a perfect example. I first had my experiences with AI in 1967.
What?
1967. The first AI ideas and concepts about it happened with the mainframes that IBM was creating. So think about this. You guys ever remember a movie called 2001: A Space Odyssey? Okay, so 2001: A Space Odyssey came out in 1967. The premise of that movie was a space station. You know, we just had space station go up and go around the moon and come back. Marvelous. It was amazing the way all that works. But this movie depicted a space station in the year 2001, which was, in 1967. What was that? 34 years later. That was going to be up there. And on that space station, there was a community of people living on it that were doing all the studies and testing and, gaining more knowledge from being out in space. But there was a computer named HAL. So you think about that. IBM, HAL. HAL is one letter removed from IBM on every letter. So, it wasn't a coincidence either.
Yeah.
But HAL, the computer that was running the space station, was programmed using AI concepts. Same thing as we're talking about today with AI agents and so forth. And in fact, conceptually, it was using regenerative AI because it would learn based on the experiences that were happening inside the space station. And the data that it was collecting and the astronauts were collecting, being fed into it, would allow it to learn more and how to respond to that data and then be able to spit out new commands or new ways of helping manage the space station. Over time, HAL, the computer, started learning how to have emotions because on the space station, there was a lot of emotions. There was people that got along and people that didn't get along and people that had ideas and people that didn't believe in those ideas. And so there was this conflict, human emotion going on the space station. And HAL learned that and eventually liked some of the people and didn't like some of the other people. He started bringing emotions into the way he used the AI that he was programmed to use. And basically the end of the movie is that Hal got so frustrated with the people that he didn't like on the space station and didn't know how to manage the emotional side of himself anymore. He blew up the space station.
Suicide.
Huh?
So the robot committed suicide.
Yeah.
And knocked them all out.
Exactly. So that was in 1967. Today, we're starting to deploy AI as if it was brand new. But conceptually, all the concepts of what AI is doing today started way back then. But it's taken more than the normal 30 years that I was talking about earlier to become adapted into the marketplace because people really didn't know how to use it. And
do they know how to use it now?
No, not in my opinion. But if you think about systems today, big systems, small systems, they're all built compartmentalized based on trying to solve a specific problem. So even big computer systems today that run medical industry for billing or moving prescriptions around or any of the kind of things that take place in the medical world, it's run by many, many unintegrated computers written by thousands of different programmers to solve a specific problem. And there's many of those thousands of different specific problems that are put into that computer system and then programmed to fix them. But now you start putting an AI agent in there, it's going to go to the lowest denominator because it doesn't have the ability to think forward. It only has the ability to take the data that's been in the past and regurgitate it. And so now it takes looking at all those little components inside these major business systems, but it doesn't have the smarts to understand which one is the most practical for the moment. So it always only goes back using
so it actually could
data.
Be delaying.
So it actually is causing faster dysfunction than it is causing
fascinating
future speed. Now, writing a letter using AI, that's a whole different thing. But actually trying to run and use AI to improve the way the processes and the systems in your large organizations or businesses operate has to be totally rethought until you have them in order. Because if you don't have them in order, if there's any dysfunctionality in your systems, and I don't know of a computer system today that doesn't have dysfunctionality, it's just going to emphasize it. So anyway, so I'm on a quest now. I'm working with a few guys. We're out on a quest to get people to understand that the architecture that they have to put into place in designing the way they're going to use AI is extremely important. You can't just throw AI at systems today without really understanding where your dysfunction is inside your systems, or it's going to get emphasized faster and faster and faster to the point that it could make your systems all fall apart, just like Hal blew up the space station. It's not unreal.
I mean, I know a lot of people that think they're the next AI master and they're going to create something in their business that's going to change the world, and they're going to start selling that to everybody. I know a lot of people like that, right? Mm-hmm. Because like AI almost gives like this feedback loop where it kind of tells you what you want to hear a little bit sometimes. So like from an emotional standpoint, the agent doesn't have any emotion, but like there's emotion on the other side. And I think just the dynamic of that, like there's a lot of places that can go. Anyway, AI is a whole different topic.
That's a new world, but
it's dominating the conversation in a lot of circles. And
you know why? Because the people that are deploying like open AI are making fast money.
Yeah.
And investors go, oh my gosh, I got to jump on this. And so it just creates speedier dysfunction because people are going to make money off of it.
Fascinating.
And people make a lot more money off of things that are wrong than they do off of things that are good. And if you look at the thousands of prescriptions that people use every day in medicine that may not even work that well, but the drug companies are making tons of money off of making prescriptions and making medicines and stuff like that. And I mean, 10 years ago, you hardly ever saw a prescription ad on TV. Now there is at least 5 an hour. The old drugs of the past, liquor and cigarettes, are no longer on media.
Can't
advertise, but the new drugs are. And I'm talking real drugs and other things. So, I mean, it's just cycles.
Yeah. So
anyway, we're getting way out of it.
I mean, all these. This is my job to try to keep this on track. Yeah. So anyway, you learned a lot there, but you've been learning your whole life, and you're still doing that and applying that in businesses as you're consulting and working with them. Are there any other organizations you worked at where you were part of something that has some similar type of innovation or bringing the future forward in time a little bit?
Well, if I can clout our own company, I mean, one of the companies I'm involved with, Hill Capital right now, one of the things that Patrick Donahue, who runs Hill Capital, has been amazingly instrumental in looking at how to finance organizations with a whole new model that hasn't been done.
I love Patrick. He's an absolute killer too. He's been on The Hustle before, but he kind of described it like Midwest private equity, because it's all about like that business owner, and the support then is provided. Obviously, you guys are investing money from Hill Capital. Hill Capital's job is to make money from that. But at the end of the day, that business owner can buy back whatever shares or the note that's there after the growth has happened, right? So it's very collaborative, and it's a really unique approach at doing that, because for a lot of businesses at a certain point, the limitation is cash and access to that. There's other limitations that are out there, as I'm sure you've run into, but when it comes to growth, money helps.
Money does help. And if you have, we help a lot of people that don't normally have access to capital because of where they are financially in their business. And it's not that they're in a bad financial strait, but they may not qualify for a major bank loan, or they don't want to go to a venture capitalist that wants a lot of equity and expects a lot of equity for a small amount of money. we want to help people grow businesses that are sustainable and that they can create more jobs from and help more people. I mean, it's kind of that old bringing humanity into technology concept. And Patrick has come up with, and the whole team at Hill and some of the other founders that were part of the vision like I was, that are all buying into it, and it's working. And so I mean, we're making money for our investors, and we're making money, or allowing the people that we invest in to make money through their businesses that we've invested in. And so it's a win-win-win, and that you don't see that a lot. Venture capital, they'll invest in 20 companies and put a lot of money into it and hope 2 or 3 of them are, have an exit strategy in 4 or 5 years for millions of dollars, and then the rest of them they don't care about. They're gone. That's not in my world. That's not the way to think about it.
Well, in the communities that those businesses are in, like there can be big impact that those communities are feeling from the business. And that's one thing we talked about as well, about really shifting from like transactional business and thought processes within an organization over to relationship based.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about that and where that idea really came from? Because you've touched on humanity and like the human part of business and the human part of technology and all that. So can you kind of just expand on?
Well, I guess, again, through all the experiences I've had, the number one most important thing that I've always found is the people. And a business idea is only as good as the people that execute it and bring it to the market and help other people understand it and how to use it best for themselves. And so become a real, well, I mean, even at Apple in the early days, I think that's where my foundation came from, because even though Steve Jobs may go on a tyrant sometimes, he really believed in people, and he let the people speak for themselves and be part of how we're going to create better experiences for other people. And so that's kind of always rung in my brain as the best way to do things. If you make the people that are working for you happy, they're going to be your best salesman. I mean, their sphere of influence. I mean, every employee that you have in an organization has a sphere of influence. Their family, their friends, their church communities, their just communities in general. If they're not happy with their business and they say something about their employer that's negative, it just ripple effect is huge. And so I don't understand why companies don't focus first on making sure all their employees are happy, because they're creating their own social media, especially with social media today. How many times do you go on social media, on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, or doesn't matter who it is, people complaining about their boss or complaining about the company they work for, or complaining about the organization they just did business with. Man, that has a tremendous ripple effect. So focus on where you can help the people in your own organization first and create the right kind of benefits for them and the right kind of culture, let alone the expense of having turnover. I mean, it's probably the biggest expense any business can have, and having to bring in new people. It's focused on helping the people first, and they will help your business succeed. And especially in the small businesses, as you're starting to grow it, it's easy to set up a framework for a great culture and still succeed and make money for yourself, because your employees are going to help you do that, and they're going to get rewarded because you're making money. So it's,
But that's really,
I mean, it seems so simple, but it's not.
As an employer, like if you're just paying them a paycheck and they're just showing up and doing their job, and that's the extent of the relationship, like that is straight up transaction. Like that's the expectation of the relationship.
Not a relationship.
Going above and beyond on both sides, right? Like we like to see that from our team members, from our leaders, but like the flipping that on its head and thinking as the owner or the leadership team, what are we doing to like go above and beyond that baseline relationship? That's something we do at Abracadabra, and I don't really have like an origin story that's as cool as yours, but it's kind of just always been there based off how my parents just raised me that way.
So Matt, when you're 79 years old, you'll be sitting on this side of the table and somebody else will be sitting on that side of the table, or whatever technology you utilize in those by then. But you'll be able to tell the same stories because the way you're thinking about what you're doing at Abracadabra is, in my opinion, the way you have to think about it and what's going to make the future better for you and everybody that you touch. And your employees are going to be saying the same thing. I know companies out there that have systems in place, and I won't say what systems, but they're so transactionally based that everything they measure inside their organization is based on a transaction or a dollar amount or a rock or blah, blah, blah. And they forget about the human side of it and the amount of turnover that these companies have and the decision processes that they sometimes make as they're growing causes them to become dysfunctional and not make nearly as much money or as much profits. They might have good revenue, but they usually aren't as profitable because their costs.
But that's really the leadership team turning into robots and not having the empathy, and they're not leading at that point, right?
They're not leading.
They're managing.
They're reacting to numbers, and they're reacting to a transaction, and that's.
There's a lot of leaders out there.
There's a lot of leaders that do that, and they don't listen to their employees. There's a couple companies I've coached that, an employee will have a really good idea because they're in the trenches every day working on something, and they come up with an idea, and then the leader and the people that are running the company will say, well, that number doesn't make sense to me because it doesn't fit into my system the way I'm supposed to, and then it gets
then it gets forgotten.
Negated. And 2 months later, that person's gone and all that good thinking goes with them and it affects the company even more.
So how do you, what type of advice for leaders and business owners that might be in a situation like that, whether they know it or not? Maybe they know it just because they listen to it now, but how do you coach them out of that type of numbers and robotic mindset?
Well, call Abracadabra. I don't know in detail all the things you do, but I at least know your mindset, and I think it's in the right spot. There are other organizations out there, I'll raise my hand to talk to somebody and try to help them. And at this age, it's not about the money. It's about just getting a return for somebody and getting a pat on the back and feel good about what you're doing. And Hill Capital, for people that are looking for capital, one of the great things about Hill is we have an ambassador group of about 30 people that all have different expertise. Some are legal expertise, some are accounting expertise, some are marketing expertise, some are sales expertise. But that accumulation of expertise and experiences can be utilized by the people that are clients of Hill Capital to make sure that their business is successful. That's what we're there for. It's not an extra charge. It's just part of being a Hill Capital client, is that we have this expertise that's going to help you be successful because we don't do equity, we do debt. We want to make sure that the companies are successful so they can pay back the loan or the debt, and we're going to help them be successful. So
there's a community and a massive knowledge base there with the 30 different ambassadors that you have. But that idea of the community, what you did in Hawaii with selling the cards and just bringing people together, that come together vibe, business owners, very much so now after COVID and all that, they're looking for more and more of that, and creating connections with people that have experience or people that are going through similar journeys. That's a lot of the reason that we built this and created the community that we're building over here with the Homegrown Hustle, is to bring all the knowledge that's out there that people actually have. Not that we're going to type into Chat GPT and try to extrapolate out or whatever, but the actual human side of it, and bring that together so that that's how businesses can move forward and we get to the relationship and really the human side of it. Because we talk B2B, B2C, and I've said this before, but it's all human to human.
It's all human
without
to human.
that, none of the rest of this exists, right? So remembering that, and then still keeping that, the emotions and knowing that it's human relationships that let businesses and communities exist, but like keeping that outside of some of the decision making, like emotions can't drive decisions all the time, right? They need to be taken into account, but really in business, correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to do math more than feelings.
I think that it takes both.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe very strongly that it takes both, that one without the other is destructive. But putting the two of them together into a architecture that makes sense, that can be measured and be repeated and rewarded, you put all that together, then you got something that really works.
Yeah. So pulling more of the feelings out of people.
Yeah.
And just having that be part of the conversation.
Yeah. If you think about, I remember talking to a group of young kids and they said, well, we love ATMs because they give us money. I said, ATMs don't give you money. ATMs are a machine that somebody else made a decision to give you money. So that's why you're getting it. It's still, you have to still interact with a person to get that money. It's not that machine giving you money. There's such a, I don't know, there's a really interesting stigma that's coming around, especially in young people today, about how revenue is really generated and how the world's going to work and how you're going to make profits. But the one thing I will say is I think their means of relationships, which is pretty much through social media or through some kind of electronic device, is going to have to change the way business thinks about humanity and the emotional side that's going into it. But if it's put into the right kind of architecture, it'll work. You just it's another one of those dysfunctional things that it can be a positive or it can be a dysfunction. It depends on how you utilize it in the way you run your business. And going back to AI, is it the piece positive for the business or is the piece negative for the business? Is the system positive for the business or is the system negative for the business? And it depends on then how it gets influenced and amplified.
Well, and so can we take that same thought and bring it to like the innovation and the visionary type of thought process? Because a lot of business owners are what people call visionaries. You're familiar with that term, right? Yeah. I believe you fall into that category a little bit, but I see a lot of businesses, and I've fallen into this trap myself, where we're looking forward and we're trying to find the new thing or the next thing or the future thing, and not actually focusing on the stuff that the business needs to do right now to actually move the needle. And sometimes it's just mature. How do you work, because you work with the business owners, how do you talk with them about shifting some of that thought process, or how would you address that problem, I guess?
It's different in every circumstance because, a company that's...
textbook answer. Yeah. Please continue.
It is different in every circumstance because... But the one common thing that I try to work on with any business leaders is, what is their real goal? Is their goal to get rich for themselves and for their family? Is that the example they want to set? Or is the goal for them to make money for themselves and their community, including their employees? And the mindset then of how they go about it changes depending on what the answer to that is. And I think one of the problems with venture capital, and a lot of times, is the people that are managing the venture capital, they only have one goal, and that's to make money for themselves. They could care less about.
They're so far removed from the people that are there.
That's all. Their money is that their goal is to take the money that they have and make more out of it in a 10 to 12 time, 15 time multiple. And they could care less if 10 people died because of it. I'm being a little dramatic.
They probably wouldn't even know if it happened.
They wouldn't even know if it happened. Exactly. So it's as a leader of a small business or a leader of a big business, remember, your people are your best asset. And I know that's been said for centuries, but it's never been adhered to, and it's never been the real main focus on why people do things. And I think social media is going to help us reach more people to get that message and to do business that way, as long as they put a container around deciding whether it's a positive or negative before they amplify it. And that sounds simple. It's not, but at least it's a mindset that I think needs to be exploited a little bit more.
I like how you think. We've absolutely ripped through the time here. We got a few more minutes. The word entrepreneur, that's changed a lot, especially with social media. Like, what do you think about when you think about entrepreneur?
Somebody that wants to do something good for themselves and the community that they're involved in. That's what I think about as an entrepreneur. Now,
what do you see as an entrepreneur walking around out there?
There are those that I just mentioned that wants to do good for themselves and the community and using ideas that they want to bring to fruition. There's also the entrepreneur mindset that if I build something, even if I'm not making any money, I can create a $1 billion evaluation and get an exit fast. We've had a lot of examples of that. It's which kind of, I guess you have to look at yourself. What do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur? Do you want to create something that has lasting value, or do you want to create something that gives you a house in the middle of the ocean on an island with a big boat? What's more satisfying for you as a person? So
that's a deep response right there. I got a next question. Hopefully you go as deep with that. We're going to look for another definition. This is a question we ask everybody that comes on. So in terms of business, we're going to frame it up around that. But what's the word hustle mean to you?
What's the word hustle mean to me? It means there's probably two definitions, but there's the one of speed of action. Mm-hmm. You're hustling to do something. You want to move to action quickly, and that which doesn't have a negative or positive connotation. It's just the fact that you want to move to an action quickly. Mm-hmm. And then there's, when I think of hustle, it does take me back to a movie called The Hustler, which was a movie. I'm trying to remember who starred in it. Paul Newman. And Paul Newman was a pool player, and he hustled other pool people for money. He was a pool shark, and so he would play dumb, not play so well, and finally get somebody on board to bet big dollars, and then he'd clean them out. So that's a different kind of hustle. That's a hustle. That's a negative hustler, which is different than hustle. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people will put those two together wrongly. And so when I think of hustle, like the Homegrown Hustle, we want to take and bring together a community of like-minded people that want to think about creating even better community that helps everybody. But we're going to do it in a fast way.
Exactly. We're going to quote you on that one. That was pretty epic. So anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up here? I know you're big with Hill Capital, but everything that you really do at this point is very purpose and passion driven. So I'll kind of let you go wherever you want to go with it. If you just want to shout out Hill Capital or any type of big takeaways you'd like the audience to have.
The only big takeaways, and I don't know the demographics of this audience and who's listening, but anybody out there, whether you're a small startup company, mid-sized company, and when I'm talking small, I'm talking under 5 million. When I'm talking mid-size, I'm talking 50 to 100 million. When I'm talking larger, it's 500 to a billion. Regardless of the size of your company, think seriously about what you want to do with AI before you start deploying it in mass in your organizations, because it can create more dysfunction than you possibly can imagine if you don't think about it properly. And I think that just like companies have chief technology officers and they have chief financial officers and they have all that kind of stuff. They now are going to start having to look at chief AI officers that help you understand the architecture in which you are going to be using AI to benefit your organization rather than it all of a sudden creating much more dysfunction than you'll ever know how to get out of. And I think that's happening in a faster pace than people realize, because in all the reports I'm reading, the Wall Street reports I'm reading, there's still less than 2% of organizations that have deployed AI in a big way to help increase ROI that have,
you said 2%?
That have less than 2%. Most big companies have put together AI initiatives and spent a lot of money on big AI programs with no return. And I probably, and basically the report back to the shareholders says, well, it's taken a while to get the agents to work. It's taken a while to get them to understand which data they should go after. It's taken them a while to understand how that data can be reapplied and da-da-da-da-da. And there's all these excuses. The excuses will continue and you'll keep going back to your board member. Oh, I just need a few more months. You got to rethink about how you deploy AI before you want to really be able to get an ROI on it. I think there's ways to do it, but it'd take way too much time to try to explain that today. But just think about it.
We'll have to get you on for another one for that. Yeah. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. We ripped through that. That was a quick hour plus. Thank you so much for joining us on the Homegrown Hustle. Guys, I hope you got some value out of this. This guy's been through it a couple times longer than I've even been around. So the knowledge that you've brought here and that you bring to Hill Capital, it's priceless. And some of my goals is to try to help pass some of that information and knowledge down so that future generations can grow and expand on that. So I'm super grateful to have you in the studio here. Thanks for all the comments and follows, guys. If you got some value out of this, throw a comment below. Any questions, send those over to us. Until next time, keep hustling.
And I'm very thankful to be here.
Hey, thanks for tuning into the Homegrown Hustle. It's been an honor to share the stories of local legends who make our community thrive. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Please stay tuned for more insight and inspiration. We got a lot of heat in the chamber. This is Matt Eickman saying peace out until next time. Get hustling.